1956 or 59, so I guess that kind of dates me. After ODS, I went to Deerfield Academy in Western Massachusetts for 4 years, then on to go to college for another 4, and then when I graduated, I joined the Peace Corps and was sent to a hilltop community outside of the town of Valdivia in southern Chile. It was a community of scattered farms and one-room schoolhouses. There was no village, there were no stores, there were no cell phones, there was no texting, there was nothing. And life there was like stepping back into the, as I imagine it would be, the mid to late 1800s rural U.S., where travel was by foot, horse, or oxen. Water was fetched from springs with buckets. There was no indoor plumbing or electricity. And only a generation before I arrived, the area was covered with virgin hardwood forest. But the Chilean government, much like our government in our history, wanted the land settled, so they doled out pieces of land to campesino, poor farmers that were willing to try to settle it. And those farmers hacked out clearings, and I use that term hacked literally because they did this without benefit of any modern equipment like bulldozers or chainsaws. All they had were long-handled axes, two-man crosscut saws, maybe if they were lucky, a pair of oxen. Well, they did such a good job that by the time I arrived there, the area was basically clear-cut. The only trees that remained were down in quebradas, steep ravines, or up high and inaccessible areas. And unfortunately, they quickly learned that the soil was lousy. It required large amounts of fertilizer, which they could not afford. Consequently, they were still eking out a living from harvesting the wood that remained, which was running out, and selling charcoal and firewood. And that's why I was there. I was there to help them reforest. The climate there, even though the soil was lousy, trees grew like a weed, and the climate was much like coastal Washington, the state of Washington. It rained there in the winters alone 100 inches a winter, whereas in Sarasota, the mean average annual rainfall is 50, half that. And so that's why I was there to reforest. Now, as Mr. Summers said earlier, I remember seeing that same ad on TV for the Peace Corps that said, "This is the toughest job you'll ever love." And that really rang true. The Peace Corps has a system after training, or at least had when I went, of grading your ability to converse in the host tongue after your training. And their system was 0 to 5, 5 being fluent, 0 being 0. And I went down, arrived in that villageless community with a 1-. So that was pretty tough. And there were so many things that were tough. Like you, I grew up in Sarasota. I went to private schools. This was a real awakening. But I eked it out. It took several months, and there is the adage that you might as well, at least for people in my situation, write off the first 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months as far as getting anything concrete done. And this is true. Just to get adjusted, learn the language, learn the hierarchy, who's who, figure it all out. But once I got my feet under the ground, I believe I did. I pushed a pencil around the other night, and I think I delivered over 1 million seedlings, pine seedlings. I figured out a program that enabled the campesinos to be able to take time off from chopping firewood so that they could reforest. I figured out a cost share where we could get a new road up into the campo. But if you were to ask me who benefited more, me from living with them or them from my efforts, I would say hands down, I was the one who benefited most. And for so many reasons. It was such an education. I learned the language, whole new culture. Self-reliance was key. Self-reliance was really key. And there's just so much. But above all, I think the thing that stands out in my mind is that these people had so little, and yet they shared it with me. And for the 2 years I was there, they opened their hearts and homes to me, and I'll never, ever forget that. And in closing, I'd like to say 3 things. Number one, I am not a recruiter for the Peace Corps, but I'm a huge fan of it. And I highly recommend it, as your teachers have. And I really hope that many, or at least some of you, will consider it at some point in your lives. Number two, I'm a huge fan of travel. I think it is extremely educational. And above all, travel to underdeveloped countries. Because not only is it an education, but also it very quickly puts our lives in perspective with other lives and with people that aren't so fortunate. And we realize so quickly how trivial so many things are that we complain about daily. And finally, you have, as Virginia said, 4 teachers here that were in the Peace Corps. And that is a real asset. And I hope you, the student body, at some point will tap into that asset. And I also hope, and I'm sure it's true, that they, the teachers, will bring some of that Peace Corps experience into the classroom. Thank you.